The Ringed City. There's a lot of stuff to talk about in this DLC. After all, it is the last piece of Dark Souls content ever. So let's try looking at things as they come to us. First up, we have the Dreg Heap, the intro to the DLC, our first area. There's not a crazy amount of story going on here, but there is some interesting lore concerning the enemies and the characters here that is definitely worth it to check out. The Angels. They seem to sprout from pilgrims. If we kill the Stonehump Tag pilgrim, she says that she'll want to see an angel, and a black angel appears in this area later on.
Well, maybe I'll get to see an angel.
Hinting that there's a natural growth from the pilgrims to the flying creatures. These enemies are quite similar to the pilgrim butterflies that we see in Lothric. There could be some connection between them of the angels turn into the butterflies, or the butterflies turn into the angels, or they're just close relatives. The angels also serve as one of the main defenses and guards at Dreg Heap before the Ringed City, blocking our path. Or not necessarily blocking, but definitely impeding our progress. The royalty of Lothric could be intentionally using them to ward off any adventurers from delving into the Ringed City that they don't want there. Moving past just the angels, the other enemies in this area, the Mercmen, the Herald Knights, etc., seem to be less purposeful, at least from a lore perspective. The Herald Knights sought the Dark Soul, but were corrupted and bloated by the depths. They now try to destroy anything that provokes them. The Mercmen, imbued with some depth power, have a similar goal of catching any traveler off guard and delivering dark justice to them. One other note, you can meet Lap, an amnesiac who wants to regain his memory, a couple of times in the Dreg Heap. He seems like an upstanding guy and can even help us once we reach the end of the area and arrive at the Demon Prince. I originally wrote a nice paragraph about the beast that Lorien slew for this section, but the description of the Demon Prince's soul recently got updated, and with that update, the lore changed. So here's the new description of the soul. The demons, birthed from a common chaos, share almost everything between them, even the pride of their prince, the near-faded flame, so that the last demon standing may rekindle it. So the demon from pain and the demon from below are actually two new demons, the last of their kind. They've been together through thick and thin all their lives, ever since they were born from the chaos flame. They've come across the flame of the original demon prince that Lorien slew, and when we take each of them down, the last one remaining uses that flame to take on the power of the Demon Prince, and fight on as him. The Demon Prince serves as the final gatekeeper to the Ringed City, preventing almost anyone from entering or leaving the City of Pygmies. After defeating the Prince, we get the small envoy banner, which relates to us the basic idea of the Ringed City. It reads, "For the Pygmies, who took the Dark Soul, the great lord, Gwyn, gifted the Ringed City, an isolated place at World's End, and his beloved youngest daughter, promising her that he would come for her when the day came. Both the Pygmies and Gwyn's daughter, Filianor, have big roles in the upcoming events. Before we leave, the arena of this boss fight has some possibly unnoticed significance. In it are some of the ruins of Firelink Shrine from Dark Souls 1. There's the main bonfire circle in the area leading to From's Hole. I don't think there are any specific lore implications at this moment. I'd say it's just a nice callback, but it is something really interesting to take note of. And one last thing before we head to the Ringed City proper are the facilitators of transport that the envoy banner calls them, that take you to the city. They're the Batwing demons we've seen so often, keyword here being demon. They obviously don't have nearly the power or presence of the Demon Prince or the old Demon King, but they are nevertheless demons. Maybe this means that the demon race isn't completely gone. If even a tiny smidgen of them remain, there's still a bit of hope. One explanation I saw for how they could live without the Chaos Flame when all of the other demons have faded away is that the gods enslaved them, made them not dependent on the Chaos Flame, but gave them a different source of power so that they would serve the gods, since we do see them doing things like transporting and protecting areas that the gods want protected in Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3. The Ringed City. Now onto the main course of the DLC. Let's first take a basic look at some of the main elements we'll see throughout the next couple of areas to give us a better background of the Ringed City as a whole, and so that explanations about things are easier because everything's so interconnected. First up, we have Princess Filianor, the centerpiece of the city. She resides asleep atop the church tower at the focus of our journey. Your goal throughout most of the upcoming sections is fighting your way to her room. The Judicators. Robe-wearing behemoths that summon legions of invincible spirits to attack you. They serve Princess Filianore and want to protect her slumber, doing everything in their power to stop you from getting to her and waking her. I posit that they're led by the main Judicator, that being Judicator Argo, who we'll talk about more later. The Locusts. Locusts and men are kindred spirits. Taking this and the fact that the Forlorn in Ariandel mutated into something insect-like when near rot, maybe the Locusts are the result of men or something close to them being near the Abyssal Swamp. Maybe it's corrupting them. Purpose-wise, the white-faced Locusts were meant to beckon men to the dark with sermons, but most of them aren't able to think past their own stomachs. We can hear the Locusts mutter when they attack, but it seems that the insatiability of their stomachs prevent them from doing their full job of preaching. However, there are a few non-hostile ones throughout the city that do cryptically preach to us about the greatness of the dark and abyss, serving their role as preachers to men, luring them to the dark.
And so, despite his weighty armor, he lived in fear of a delicate thing, little more than a girl. Where fire resideth, shadows twist and shrivel, but in the abyss, there are shadows none. Fear not the dark, my friend, and let the feast begin.
Lastly, we have the Ringed Knights. Here's another group that's somewhat aligned with the Abyss. Their armor and weapons were forged in the Abyss, and the gods feared them for this reason. So the gods branded them with a seal of fire, the dark sign. The gods displaying their fear of the dark and the abyss, and acting on that fear, is a powerful theme throughout this DLC, probably throughout all of Dark Souls. Keep on the lookout for it as we continue down the lore of the Ringed City. Now that we have an understanding of who will be seen as we progress, we can start talking about the actual story progression. An important note that I haven't mentioned yet is that throughout this whole DLC, we're chasing after Slave Knight Gale from Ashes of Ariandel. This was said when the DLC was first announced, and it's easy to see. He guides us through Dregkeep, leaving notes and pointers, and he's even available to summon at the Demon Prince. When we first get to the Ringed City, an NPC lets us know why we're there, to find the Dark Soul. And Gale is looking for this too, as the painter back in Ariandel needs to paint a new world, and she needs the Dark Soul as pigment. The whole journey, we're a step behind Gale. This changes at the very end of the DLC, but before then we have a boss fight, a dragon, and quite a few other pieces of important lore. As we delve deep into the Ringed City, we'll come across Lap a few more times. He's searching for a certain purging monument to regain his memory. If we complete the Show Your Humanity riddle, find the monument, and tell him, we can reach the end of his quest. In the crypt, he'll trick you and reveal his now remembered identity. It's Patches. But he doesn't actually put you in any danger when he tricks you and kicks you off a small cliff. He leaves behind a nice set of armor, and he actually pushes you in the direction that you normally would have had to go once you get to that location in the crypt. So it's pretty well appreciated. One does have to wonder how Patches made it all the way to the Ringed City and got hollowed at that, but that's a talk for another day. The Patches storyline in this DLC is one that's pretty peculiar, especially his final dialogue.
A fine dark soul to you.
But we'll talk about that sometime later. Another NPC that can be found in the city is Shira, a handmaiden and knight of Filianore, and one who is of royal blood herself. She pleads with you to slay the dragon Midir, as he's been corrupted by the dark, his sworn enemy.
I would have thee put the dragon to rest, before the dark consumeth him, and his vows are forgot. I offer my sincerest gratitude, thou who art ken to God's name.
It seems not even one of the mightiest beasts can avoid the dark's potent touch. Midir will make your bridge crossings in the Ringed City quite a pain, but he can eventually be beaten down to his lower chasm. Shira will let you know that you need to finish the job. The shortcut near the Gwyn statue reveals the secret of entrance to Midir's lair. A quick aside about that Gwyn statue, it's Gwyn crowning a pygmy. We know that the Ring City was a gift from Gwyn to the pygmies, also possibly a sort of prison to keep them contained. The act captured in this piece of stone shows Gwyn further placating the pygmies, the vessels of the Dark Soul. He, like the other gods, feared the power that they held, as the Dark Soul was one of the 4 Great Lord Souls, the source of the gods' power. Gwyn knew that he had to stay on the pygmies' good side if he didn't want any trouble, and we see him doing that here. Again, this is a reference to our theme of the gods fearing the dark. Returning to Midir, he's a descendant of archdragons, who was raised by the gods and owing to his immortality, was given a duty to eternally battle the dark. A duty that he would never forget, even after the gods perished. Even his full name attests to his duties. It's Dark Eater Midir. He's one who battles with and even consumes the dark. The Eater part of his name probably helped lead to his corruption, as consuming the dark without being affected by it would seem an impossible task. Midir was used by the gods to help fight their fear of the dark. He was cursed from the beginning and doomed to fall, as the brute force of a dragon is not something that could ever hope to conquer the deep, unrelenting tug of darkness. This next progression in the city will have Shira turn against you. Entering Felionor's church makes it clear that your intentions are not to defend Felionor's slumber as Shira would have thought. Judicator Argo, the seeming leader of the Judicators I mentioned before, warns you to leave, and if you do not, he summons Half-Light or any other spear of the church to come and stop you. Upon arrival, he mentions how you must leave in keeping with the king's decree. This means that Gwyn placed a decree that none were allowed to come wake Felionor, his daughter. We have to wonder what the importance of Felionor's slumber is that so many in the Ring City would go to such lengths to protect it, and even Gwyn would decree it to be protected. But, as we are Dark Souls players, we ignore all of this and kill our way forward. Past the fight, up the elevator, and a couple steps, resides Princess Felionor, in her sleep holding a decrepit egg. Waking her sends us into a wasteland of ash. One description I heard of it was the Ashen Wastes, and that's something that I really think captures the idea of this environment. The Ring City is destroyed and buried. I guess we can see why no one wanted us to wake the princess up. Making our way through the wasteland, we find a pygmy lord, dragging himself to Felionor's room, begging for help. The complexity of the implications in this area is absolutely astounding. Off in the distance, we can see the ruins of Lothric and Anorlando, and the wasteland extends everywhere. One could even posit that all the other kingdoms we know of, Drangleic, Astora, Katarina, have suffered the same fate. It does bring up many questions though. Obviously time is convoluted throughout the game, so did we just jump forward in time? Or is Felionor's sleep only casting an illusion on the Ring City like Gwendolyn did in Dark Souls 1? At the moment, I unfortunately do not have any great answers or further explanations of this area, at least in this video. We can discuss it more in a later video, but at any rate, everything's pretty messed up. So here we are, at the final boss of the Dark Souls franchise, Slave Knight Gale. He's consumed the Dark Soul of the Pygmy Lords, and now wants yours. He's been completely corrupted by the darkness. Gale wasn't anything special before. He was a slave knight, ever dedicated to serving his master, the painter. He beseeched your help in the painted world, and then took it upon himself to find the painter the pigment she needed, taking on a universe of terrors and monsters. He knew he wasn't a god or a lord or a king or any of that. He was just a slave. And when he reached his destination, he was met with a surprise. For when Gale came upon the Pygmy Lords, he discovered that their blood had long ago dried, and so he consumed the Dark Soul. Gale wanted to use the blood of the Dark Soul as pigment for his lady. However, the Pygmy Lords could no longer provide that. Someone needed to convert the Dark Soul into blood that could be used as pigment. So he did what he had to do and consumed the Dark Soul, probably knowing that he wouldn't be able to control it and that someone would have to come stop him. Maybe, before he lost his mind, he even knew that you would be the one to stop him. He sacrificed, making the decision he knew had to be made. The painter needed the blood of the Dark Soul, and he provided it. Gale was like us, nothing special, just a determined person who had the drive to refrain from becoming hollow and to carry out his task. Ending the series with such a similar and familiarly tragic character was a very welcomed experience for me. As I said, you can give the painter the blood of the Dark Soul once you overcome Gale. She's overjoyed and sure that she will paint a goodly world, one that she hopes can be a peaceful home for Gale. I know Gale will be at peace with this ending, and so am I. Thanks to all of you for watching. I'd like to also thank the Dark Souls community on Reddit and on Discord for offering tons of great ideas and helping me form my own thoughts on what happened throughout this DLC, also with corrections whenever I got something wrong. A lot of what is in this video came in part or in full from ideas and discussions I saw and had in these places, so I definitely don't take credit for coming up with everything in this video. I do hope you enjoyed and stick around because I do plan to delve deeper and really look at the lore of things like Gale, Midir, and the like. There's a ton more to talk about with Lap, with Gale, with the final area, the Ashen Wastes. One thing to note is that the Ashen Wastes appear in the intro cinematic and on the cover of the game, which is mind-blowing. So I do want to look at all of that in more depth. This video wasn't too in-depth, it was more a broad picture. I had to quickly go over a lot of content I talked about because I wanted to try and touch on everything super important to the core lore in this DLC. Thanks again, and always remember, the gods caused so much trouble, so much pain and curse and suffering, because they were afraid of the dark. Peace out, everyone.